Hello and welcome to our LinkedIn Live. Barbara, thanks for being here with me. Today we're talking about mindfulness as a leadership super skill. Um, and as we get started, we want you to consider a question. And the question is, what is the impact you want to have in 2025?
Mm,
Did you say, as you were entering this new year, that you wanted to have a meaningful impact? If you got to the end of 2025 and you were talking about the things you accomplished and how the year went, what would be some of the things that you achieved that add up to that meaningful impact? And what Barbara and I are going to share with you today is that mindfulness is really the way and the path towards how you can have that meaningful impact you most desire.
yeah. And why is that, right? Like, what are we talking about when we're talking about mindfulness is to get present and be aware of yourself and the situation you're in. It really is about getting present to the moment. The part of ourselves that is most present is our physical body. So the more we can center ourselves in our bodies, we often invite, this is like, how do I get centered and grounded so that I can be mindful of my best thinking, my emotions, the situation, how I can discern a situation, right? For not what I think it is, but really kind of ground to like, wait, what is happening here? Who am I and what's my part? So I can be grounded in the best choices, right? And leadership is so much about making the best choices, the most informed choices, right? Heather, we often talk about the best information is where the action is. So the real invitation for mindfulness is to become present, grounded in your body, where you're thinking, your emotions, all you. I think of it as like the container of me, so that I can be where the action is, not thinking ahead or thinking in the past or having my emotions drive me around the situation, right? Like to actually have a great assessment. So,
Gifts and why we think of mindfulness as a leadership super skill and a skill that you could cultivate, right? You can have a certain level of mindfulness in your approach that you're starting with today, and you can also add to and develop that approach so that you are even more mindful, right? There's varying degrees of mastery on the path of mindfulness, so you can strengthen your mindfulness intentionally. And this gives you a lot of leverage. It is a super skill because, as you were sharing, Barbara, it helps you be more grounded and present even in high pressure situations. And in business and life today, we are facing more and more uncertainty and high pressure situations. So, those of us as leaders, team members, company owners that develop a greater level of mindfulness in our approach, we will have an advantage as we navigate the complexity, right? If you have a practice and if you're strengthening your mindfulness, you are giving yourself an advantage in this time that we're living through, which is very, very complex. And you're getting to choose, who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? That's what we're really going for, is individuals empowered to make those choices.
and you mentioned practice,
Yeah.
right? So many skills, because mindfulness is actually a skill of disciplining our thinking, our mind, right? Because that's the place that, our mind and our emotions can be scattered, but it's our thinking that truly drives our perception.
Mhm.
What our thinking is drives our perception that impacts our behavior and the actions we take. So I was just thinking when we talk about practice, one of the things we're doing is kind of building a muscle,
Mhm.
right? Kind of building a habit so that we have less under stress and strain. We don't have to be like, okay, wait a minute, I got to get present. How do I do that? Okay, let me take a breath. Let me pause a minute, right? Like that has to be starting to be habitual, so that under stress and strain, we have the way to go to get to our best grounded self in order to make those decisions and right actions. So practice means just that. It's like the rudiments of practicing. So, kind of taking the time to, how do you start your day? We're talking about, well, how are you starting your year? Like, what do what impact do you want to go for? Well, how do you start your day is a great place to start, because it's in those transitional times throughout our day. How do you complete your morning work to go have lunch? How do you transition back to work mode? How do you transition at the end? How do you finish your day? How do you start your day?
Yeah, and Barbara, you and I just had a call with some leaders from our year-long leadership training program, and one of the things we discussed was, how are you intentionally going into this meeting,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And
Hmm.
so, with mindfulness and developing mindfulness to the next level, we're asking you to integrate it more into each moment of your day and your routine. And so, meetings are a great example of a time where we can mentally prepare ourselves before we go into the meeting and say, what is my intention here in going in the meeting? What's the purpose of the meeting? What do I actually hope to get out of going to the meeting? Who am I going to be in how I show up in the meeting? And that you can set these attentions and then go to the meeting, and it's like a little game you can play with yourself to practice showing up how you really intended for the
Hmm.
meeting, and bringing this higher level of intention to everything we do. That's increasing the amount of your day that you spend in a more mindful energy approach, as opposed to our hardwired automatic autopilot approach to life.
Right, right. And part of that, we were chatting before we got on this call about that autopilot, right? Like this is where we can trip ourselves up, especially in our everyday routines, right? In our roles that we show up every day and that type of thing, that we can become unconscious of patterns of approach, of thinking, how we're showing up, um, and really then not have the impact or the experience or the influence that we're going for. And then we start judging the situation, ourselves or others in the situation. Team meetings is a great target for that. It's like, that meeting nobody wants, right?
Yeah.
And we keep talking about team meetings because it's the juicy part of the day when you're collaborating in a team with sharing your thinking and being something that when individuals come together, you become something greater than your individual parts. And for a business, for a team, that's really helpful. We have many different perspectives, many different talents that come together to achieve our goals in business. So this is really important. But going back to like the dreaded meeting, it's like, how am I showing up? What am I looking to receive? And what's my part? What hat? I always think about a hat that you're wearing for your role, to be sure that I'm coming into to contribute and receive what's most essential for the success in my role. And part of the success in my role is to be supporting everybody else in the success of their roles too. That's what it takes to be, a vibrant team. So being present, taking a breath, not rushing from meeting to meeting, right? I have a client, that one of our clients that I was coaching the other day, and what a difference it has made. She has changed her hour to a 50-minute and given herself that 10-minute buffer we often recommend to transition. And I think that's something that's coming up that's really important here, is how do I transition, center and prepare myself to be for what is happening now or next or next or next.
Yeah, so transition moments, from what you're sharing, are really key opportunities to tap into a little mindfulness, self awareness, connection with yourself, connection with how in this moment right now, before I go from what I'm doing here to what I'm going to go do over there with the team, I can pause in between and say, check in. How am I doing? How
Hmm.
am I feeling? How's my energy level? Am I taking good care of myself today? Do I need a snack right now? Like, what do I need to be okay? And then where am I headed next, and what kind of focus and intention do I need to bring to that, right? We can't be hyper vigilant and mindful in every moment. It just isn't possible. Our autopilot does kick in. We do get into a zone and do certain things, but we can bring a higher level of intention to these transition points in our workday as a way to be sure that we're really showing up to have the impact we want to have. If, as leaders and team members, we're committed to having a positive and meaningful impact as we go about what we do, then finding these transition moments to tap in, be a little bit more mindful and intentional, and then proceed, that's going to go a long way to set you up to have the impact you most want to have.
Absolutely. And some of that transition is, what I was just coming to my mind is like being in a meeting in the morning, okay, and not really transitioning myself. So things I'm really trying to solve the problem that came up in that meeting, and I left the meeting with it
Your
unresolved,
mind
right?
is still
And
going with
it's
it.
still with me because
Yeah.
I never did a full transition to say, well, what am I going to do with this incomplete piece? So I'm thinking about that, and then I go to another meeting and I'm busy thinking about the other thing because I didn't complete the cycle enough to transition to being present. It's like, okay, Barbara, set this aside, make a note or do whatever I need to do, whatever my disciplines are, like my to do list or whatever. I'm going to come back to that, but get myself centered. So now I'm going someplace else. I can be somewhere else and be present and participate and come back to that. But that's a transition point that you need to work at.
Well, I love that because that points out like a good way that some of this practice of being mindful can lead to stronger habits
Right.
in how we're approaching our day. So, do you have a practice and a habit already for
Mm.
how you take notes in a meeting, and then how you then take those notes that you made in the meeting and get them the information to the people that were not in the meeting? Do you have a way that you take good enough notes for yourself if you happen to have a day that is a series of meetings? Or do you end up on a series of meetings and you lose track of your notes and your progress, right? This might be a place where you could be more intentional and make a better agreement and have a practice with yourself of how you take the notes from your meetings, and then how you have this time. Barbara, you were sharing about a client who now made their meetings 50 minutes instead of an hour so that they could have 10 minutes of transition, right?
Right.
10 minutes that would help them take information from the meeting that they were just in, digest it, think about who needs to know what, and how do I update those people, and then have a moment to recalibrate for wherever you're headed next, right? We want,
Absolutely.
we need these things. So are you setting yourself up and your team up for success in this way? Or would you like to try something like 50-minute meetings so we all have 10 minutes between meetings and we're able to do those kinds of things? It's just one solution, but it's a way for you to look at what could I do that would help move the needle to make me more effective as I move from meeting to meeting.
Yeah. And, whether it's meetings or tasks or other things, that what was coming to my mind was one of the things that trips us up often with good intentions is when we start having worries and concerns. My example before was like, oh, I didn't get that resolved, so I'm still like concerned about resolving it, right? But worry and concern is one of those things that leads us into our emotions distracting us,
Hmm.
right? In that, and we carry that, and it's a distraction, and it takes away my energy and focus. And again, these transition piece, we often coach with our clients about pacing your day. And what we're talking about here is in that pacing of your day, think about those transition points. Think about the things that might trip you up. If my mind is worrying and concerning about something, it's taking away from my ability to use my best intellect, right, in the moment for having conversations or doing detail work or, connecting with others in a meeting. It and it also depletes us, right? That drain of energy, that brain exhaustion is a thing that can really trip us up. And so some of those things, completing those cycles again, is part of this transition piece for that valuable ability to really connect, to use your best thinking and that expansive thinking, right? Not the narrow thinking, but the ability to say this or something else, to hear somebody else's idea and expand your own thinking. That takes a focus and a presence to be able to really do that. And that's so satisfying when we are present and able to do that in our work.
Well, one of the things I hear you sharing about, Barbara, and something that we've been talking about a lot recently, but it's like how I would put it is protect your energy.
Hmm.
Protect your energy. At times, as a human, our brain likes to get busy and worry about a lot of different things. And depending on what's happening in your company and in your role, certain things may be happening or not happening. And the mind can make up all kinds of stories and get really, really busy. And these things can be energy drains. So
Hmm.
this is a place for where you can look and pause and think, how am I letting my energy sort of leak out in this direction? Am I worried about something that I really don't have enough information on to even worry about at this point? What if
Right.
I just press pause and trust that when the time comes, if I need an update about XYZ project, that's going to happen. For now, it is where it is. I'm not involved further at the moment, and I'm not going to just let my mind spin about it, right? So, where are the places too in your everyday interaction and as you navigate your role where you can protect your energy so
Hmm.
that because you are a limited resource. I'm sure you've heard Barbara and I talk about that many, many times already, because we're very passionate about humans understanding that they're very valuable resources and also limited resources just by the fact that we're human. And part of being in business is learning how, maturing in how you think about and use yourself as a resource. So, mindfulness in your daily approach also invites you to plug those energy drains when the things that are not in the impact or the scope of your role, the things that you are not involved in and cannot really influence or change, try not to let yourself get over involved or spin out about them mentally. Save your energy and your focus for where you can be a positive impact and influence.
Right. Well, saving your energy is an important key there, right? Like it's really recognizing that where you put your attention and focus is where your energy goes. And the more we can do this discerning of sort of how, I guess what was coming to me is also how we spin our energy in beyond worry and concern, judgments, criticism, upsets, right? We were talking about that in our coaching call with our group today in our year long program. Like, how much of my energy do I want to give to an upset before I have that moment? Let me get present. Let me just see what's really going on and be able to get myself to a state to be with what is. And then it might be something just to set aside for a moment. Maybe I need to back myself away or take a walk outside, whatever it is, those, again, where is my energy going right now? In upset, negativity, that feeling I don't have any power, like, wow, that is such a drain compared to what could I do to get myself in a better state so I can actually get more energized in positive ways to discern the best actions or just get present with myself again in the situation.
Yeah. So present, that's a key word when we think about mindfulness too. So I'm wondering if, as people are listening to this conversation, are you now understanding or feeling more connected to the concept of mindfulness as a leadership super skill?
Mm.
And I think the good news in the way that we see it, Barbara, is it's a skill. Mindfulness is a
Yes,
practice,
it
right? And
is.
it's a
Mhm.
skill that you can actually intentionally develop. This is somewhere where you could really move the needle and strengthen your leadership and your impact from your role by being intentionally um, working on and developing mindfulness in your daily approach. And we'd like to invite you, if this speaks to you and you're curious about how mindfulness could strengthen your approach in your role and in with your team, we'd like to invite you to do a discovery call with Barbara. The link will be below this video here. This is a great opportunity to just get some one-on-one coaching support tailored to what's happening in your role in this moment in time and really help you get a little leverage. So, Barbara and I love what we do, and we love supporting leaders to have that more meaningful impact. So, it's a real joy. I know that Barbara loves to connect with all of you on these discovery calls, and you really can leave this call with some meaningful insight and a powerful shift in your approach. So, again, I invite you to click the link, sign yourself up for a discovery call, and see how you can strengthen your mindfulness and become the leader that you most want to be in 2025.
Right.
Thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you, Barbara, for being here for this conversation with me, and wishing everybody a great rest of the week. I have my Martin Luther King t-shirt
Oh,
on.
I was going to comment on that, right? It's
Just
so
want
great.
to
So
use this.
read it to us, Heather.
Yeah, I love this quote. The time is always right to do what is right. And we need mindfulness so that we can be in that moment, the now moment, fully empowered and choose. You get to choose each moment. What next right action can I take? And
Right.
the world needs more of us, all of us, more empowered. So I just want to leave us with that as well. Let's honor the life and legacy of Martin Luther King and be empowered in each moment today. What is the next right step for you if you were choosing how to move forward and have that meaningful impact you most want to have?
Right.
All right.
Thanks for listening today.
All right. Take care, everyone. See you
Bye.
again soon. Bye.